Hey, Slick Talkers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. And I know that if you love this show, you'll also love my morning show called Good Morning Hospitality with my co hosts Michael Golden and Brandy Canali, as we spend 30 minutes every Monday morning to dive into the industry's top latest news and trending topics. So go check it out on wherever you find your podcasts at Good Morning Hospitality. And you can live stream with us on Monday mornings on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Now, I hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast where we discuss all things hospitality, hotels, and business. You can find us online at slicktalkthepodcast.com and on every podcast listening platform.
Welcome back to Slick Talk, everybody. Today I'm joined with Scott Stanfield, a 20-plus year restaurant expert and recent GM coach. He has been in the industry for quite a while and worked in restaurants from all over the board. So today I want to just say thank you to Scott and welcome into the show. How are you doing today, Scott?
I'm doing great today, Will. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
My pleasure. Thank you. So today we're really talking about, this is episode 1 of our 3-episode series about, just restaurant and hospitality and just kind of the food side of the business. And so for today, our episode is going to be interviewing for character, emotional intelligence, and hospitality traits. Now, Scott, since that you're, first time on the show, let's introduce you to everybody and kind of get your quick background and some experience and just your story.
Well, I started back of the house as a dishwasher. It's really, interesting, because you can apply at jobs, or we have people who apply with no experience. And that's why we're going to talk about interviewing. And I applied at like 15 different restaurants before I got hired as a dishwasher at age 21. And 90 days later, I was promoted through the kitchen all the way to being a front of the house manager. And I'd never had waited tables or hosted or bartended or any of those things. So I was either the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time. I don't know which one, but that was almost 26 years ago. Wow. This May will be 26 years ago that happened. So, I default to, checking on the kitchen and the back of the house and those things. But gosh, that was a casual seafood restaurant in Irmo, South Carolina. And I've traveled to Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. I've worked in Salt Lake City, Utah, Park City, Utah, and Colorado. So I've been all over the map.
Yeah, and you worked for not just restaurants in general, because like you said, you started at a seafood restaurant, yeah.
Seafood restaurant, Steamer Seafood Company was the name of it. It's the name of it. They still have a location in Kentucky, Lexington, okay. Kentucky. Yep. Okay.
So not only just standalone restaurants, but you've also worked in restaurants in some major hotel chains as well.
Correct. I was the director of restaurants for the Hilton Corporation at the Salt Lake City Center in downtown Salt Lake. And I worked at I was a director of food and beverage at a Marriott Autograph Collection property in Park City, Utah.
Awesome. Well, that's kind of similar background. You and I both come from an autograph collection Marriott property, so that's pretty sweet. We know the standards there are very well and very high. So kind of cool for you though. Like you did in that 90-day period, you jumped pretty far in that chain of command. So I guess you could say you were at the right place, right time, and also, being a GM coach now in the last 4 or 5 years, you've really kind of carved your own path of success very quickly and very true that that your skills and the kind of the, I guess, guideline that you've created is working.
Yeah, I've basically developed a system that works in 3 different pillars, where it's about hiring for character and having a team for great character. That's the first pillar. Training people above the expectations of our guests and our owners, and above the expectations, and then basically creating an ecosystem that promotes collaboration or trust, and where people feel safe that allows the organization to grow organically, almost sometimes without even trying, because of all the right things are in the right place. So I just had to figure that stuff out, and started putting it together. And I've worked around or for major corporations, so I've been able to learn from them, but then also apply that to any environment I've worked in, whether it be a hospital or oil refinery or a 4-star Marriott autograph collection.
Awesome. Well, really, the 3 pillars that you're talking about here are going to be the coverage of our episodes. And for me, I just think the overall, like having that pillars, a lot in my podcast, I've talked about, creating a brick house, creating that good foundation. And those 3 pillars really cover a lot of the foundational for a good team, for a good property, for a good restaurant, hotel, whatever it may be. So for me, I've only had a small amount of experience in the restaurant side. And, I've always been a hotel man myself. And then jumping into a restaurant as a manager there, that was a interesting take because, kind of like you in a training period, I had to go from dishwasher to busser to server to manager pretty much in a short amount of time and learning all these skills. With you, so we're kind of talking about interviewing and what kind of character and emotional intelligence and hospitality traits are. In the last 20 years, you've probably had to interview and process new employees and all sorts of kind of management role type duties for the last 20 years. So how can you tell when someone is being honest during an interview or just putting on a show for a job? Because that's one thing I've noticed, that people, when they start their interview, you think, you have a really good positive feel. Maybe it's just I don't know the traits to look for, but you feel really confident, and then they end up working their first week or two and being a complete bust. So really, let's dive into what those traits are, what you kind of notice, the body language, all the things that you look for as a GM.
Well, the first thing I look for is congruency. And when I'm talking about congruency between the words that come out of their mouth and either, almost like Sherlock Holmes, like this Sherlockian, like I'm trying to figure it out by paying attention to, like, for instance, if they say that, they love, to go hiking and spend time outdoors and connect with nature, but yet they're like 47 pounds overweight and, pale as the flour that the chef's using to make bread in the back, then that's not congruent, right? With how they look. They may have the idea that they like to spend time outdoors and connect with nature and work out and do those things, but their actions aren't doing what's matching the words coming out of their mouth. So I'm paying attention to what they're saying, and not really paying attention so much to their resume and getting what I call seduced by the resume. I don't want to do that. I want to tease out the behavioral-based patterns with them. So then another thing I look at is when I ask a difficult question, what I call my right hook questions, I'm looking at their micro expressions on their face. And I learned about this from the TV show. This is almost like Sherlock Holmes as well. The series called Lie to Me. And so my son and I have read, bought the book and read it and paid attention to it and do those things. And so, even my son said in some interviews, just observing what's going on. And he's just astonished at what happens is when you ask these tough questions, what information comes out on people's face, right? So I'm paying attention to these to micro expressions, the congruency between their words. And also, like, for instance, if I ask somebody like a standard question, I don't ask this question, I ask a version of this, but where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? And they're interviewing to be a dishwasher or interviewing to be a host or server assistant. And they're like, I want to own a restaurant in the next 3 years. And I'm like, oh, you're just like interviewing to be like a server assistant. How are you going to get to be, and I'll ask them, how are you going to get to be a restaurant owner in the next 3 years? So I'm looking to see if what's coming out of their mouth matches up with the reality for what's going on with their lives.
Gotcha. Well, the micro expression, that's a really interesting way to look at it and to go about, because they're so quick and sometimes hard to catch. So I like that. I'll have to keep that on my tool belt for future endeavors. So I guess another thing with what you're talking about, the getting seduced by a resume, because for me, I've always been a resume builder. Whatever makes you look good, because you want obviously getting your foot in the door, but not only does it make you look good to get your foot in the door, but you have to be able to back it up. Do you maybe have a quick tip on how you can tell when someone's just getting their foot in the door trying to look good, or when they're actually able to both look good on paper, but also back it up with their action?
Well, I promised myself a long time ago I wouldn't become one of those managers that refused to hire people without experience. Like it took me those 15 or 16, applications to get hired because I had no experience. Right. So, so the classic way of breaking down a resume would be like longevity in a particular job. But as I'm getting older and the workforce is getting younger, they're bouncing around a little bit more than what we did or what we were trained by our parents to do. Like my dad worked at a job for 32 years. The longest I've had is 6.5 years at a job. Yeah. Right. And so it's even getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And if you work in a resort area and you have people who come to you or they bounce around between a summer season and a winter season, they're going to have 6 months on their resume. So I try to not discount those things as much, because I want to understand the behavioral based patterns behind the person that forces them to make decisions in certain ways. And so I'm hiring for character, not so much off the resume. I even ask a question. I call it my purple cow question. And this goes to the Seth Godin book, Purple Cow, is I want somebody to tell me something remarkable about themselves. I will say, hypothetically speaking, let's say I interview somebody who has more experience than you. Tell me why I should hire you over somebody with more experience. And because the prevailing thought is experience trumps everything else, they have an answer. But I'm not looking for punctuality, something bland like punctuality. I'm a fast learner and, quick learner. I'll show up to work on time. I'm looking for something amazing. Like I interviewed a lady the other day for a manager position, and she said, because I'm the one that comes with heart. I'm like, I got chills. I was like, you almost said you're hired, right?
Yeah.
Because she comes with heart. I mean, that's what you want. You want a staff of people that come to your guest and come to their fellow employees with heart more than they would come with, hey, I've worked at this place and this place and this place, so you need to hire me because I have all this experience.
So that kind of leads into the second part then of emotional intelligence, because having heart, which is huge in our industry, if you don't have heart, then you're pretty much in the wrong industry for sure. But do you ever feel like, or have you noticed or experienced maybe somebody who comes with a lot of heart, a lot of passion, can maybe not be as emotionally intelligent? They're very emotional roller coaster when it comes to decisions and certain situations, either with guests or with staff. Do you notice a big difference, or I guess, because, we're talking about emotional intelligence here. Do you notice a difference? Do you see some emotional intelligence with people that have heart and passion for what they're doing, or is it really kind of a bust?
I think they can work independently of each other. It's not just because somebody has great heart doesn't mean they have great emotional intelligence. Somebody can have a great heart for, caring for animals or elderly people or children, but get emotional about it and get emotionally hijacked. So it's not like, okay, just because somebody's compassionate, it means they have empathy or that they have self-control or in a high stress situation. Some of the best, players. So when you look at emotional intelligence, I always think of like Michael Jordan or somebody who you wanted the ball in their hands in the closing seconds of the game to take that winning shot or field goal or try to run for the touchdown or throw the pass, right? That would be cool and calm under pressure. So you think about who's on your team that you can give the ball to, so to speak, when the stress is the highest, and they're not going to flinch. They're not going to sweat. They're not going to do anything. They're just going to execute.
They have a good poker face is what you're kind of.
Well, exactly. Yeah. It's exactly what it is. Right. And so you want a team of people that have a high collective emotional intelligence across the board. It goes back to, your team's only as strong as the weakest link, but we always think about talent or speed or strength. We don't always think about, where they are emotionally and how they operate under the most stressful times. And that may be somebody that has less experience than another person, but we can train them the skills to do the job, but they have a higher emotional intelligence. And then over time, your team's performance will surpass if you have what I call a whole team of high-priced free agents that are here because they got hired because they have the best resume, not because they have the best performance on the field.
That's a really good way to put it. And I actually I think I've thought about it that way, but I've never actually heard it said the way you said it. And it was actually really clear. And I like that. And for kind of getting, we're 15 minutes into the episode, a lot of people, a lot of my listeners, they're used to hotels and to me talking about that side of the industry, not the other side where you're providing a guest experience with a restaurant that's attached to a hotel and stuff. So with emotional intelligence that you just kind of mentioned, and the title of this episode also has hospitality traits. Do you see a bridge that connects hospitality traits and emotional intelligence the way you just described?
Absolutely. 100%. I'm a little bit older, right? Because I'm 47, right? Because I've been doing this a long time. So back in 2001, the best movie of the year was A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
And he played a real character, John Nash, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics for creating the John Nash equilibrium, or this game theory piece. And in that movie, there's a bar scene. Now, there's these girls that walk in, and that's just when he supposedly comes up with this theory of this Nobel Prize winning theory on economics. And prior to this time, Adam Smith was the prevailing thought, where for the best possible outcome in a capitalist environment is for everybody to do what's best for themselves, or every man for themselves, right? Mm-hmm. Is what we would say in that quote that we've heard our whole lives. But at that point in the movie, he says he's incomplete. He needs a revision. And he says, for the best possible outcome in a capitalist environment, a person should do what's best for themselves and for the team or for the group, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you hire people, if you can figure out how to ask questions and get the answer from people that lets you know that they will, in the heat of the moment, they will remain calm, and they also will put the group, or have a bend to putting the group before themselves, you will have a team of people who will automatically default to giving great service no matter how busy they are.
Okay. And so for you, I guess, because we all know, I think for us that are in the industry, so whether any of my listeners right now are new, young, or just, kind of diving into their passion for the hotel and restaurant side of hospitality, what are hospitality traits? If you could use 3 to 5 words, or maybe a sentence that describe hospitality traits, what would that be? What would that be, something that you say to someone that you're training for a position at a restaurant or a hotel?
I don't know that I would train them on it. I'm trying to find it, that it is innate in them and they don't even know they have it. So I ask all these questions to tease all those things out. And the reason I had to come up with these questions is because, I may not have as many, to be honest with you, as many street smarts that people who grew up with a rougher life that could, that were out on the streets and, things like that. And so there's this thing called street smarts. And so I had to come up with a system to be able to tease these things out, to get a feeling for people. And so what I'm looking for is basically behavioral based traits that default to giving great service. And what that is that they have a bend to taking care of other people. And that's really what you're looking for. So let me give you an example. I'll give you my question, that if this is not answered right, I will not hire them.
Okay.
One question. Now, I've done a lot of soft pedaling. I consider this like a boxing match. I'm doing jab, 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 and this is my first right hook. I'm going for a knockout. And if this is not answered in a particular way, I will finish the interview, but they won't make it to a second interview, and the person won't get hired. Okay.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I will say this. I will say I have 2 hypothetical questions. Now, I've already told you the purple cow that will follow this question up. Okay. But first one would say, let's say you went to see the doctor and the doctor said you had 6 months to live. what would you do with the remaining time?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would say. What would you do with the remaining time? And I would wait for an answer. Now, I'm looking for a non-self-centered answer. If they tell me I would go skydiving, I would travel the world, things that are self-centered, I would automatically, and that's all they gave me, or they don't mention family at all, or friends, or spending time with family or friends, then they're not getting hired. And so what happens though, I will give one caveat on this. You have to grade this question on a curve. If I'm interviewing a 17-year-old, 16-year-old person to work in a support position, say host or server assistant or something like that, they may not have perspective in life to know that they need to spend time with family yet, because they're still being taken care of by their parents. So
or they're newly out on their own and they don't have anybody supporting them at all.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So they don't have that piece there. The best answer I think I've ever gotten under the heat of the moment was from a J1 student that was looking for a second job. And she said, I would get a second opinion.
I would get a second opinion. Wow. That's actually pretty clever.
That was clever. And she was a great employee. I hired her. I mean, I thought that wasn't like my prototypical answer that I was looking for, because I'm looking for somebody to go, you know what? I would just spend time with my family. I would, I'd like to travel. I'd like to go see some things I haven't done. I'd like to clear up some of the wrongs I've done and make things right. It was like just them focusing on something else, right? Besides like, oh, I'm going to go skydive. I'm going to travel. And you know what? Sometimes I give people like this out. I will do this sometimes. Let's say the interview's gone really good up to that point, and they would say, and they kind of hem and haw, and they're like, I'd like to travel, and then I would let them answer. And then I would say, well, would you take anybody with you? Oh yeah, of course. I'd take my family and, things like that, or however they would do that. But there has been interviews that I have been asked that question, and, to a female, specifically asked it to a female, and she didn't bring up the fact that she had a husband or a daughter. Right. And,
wow.
And so she was, she was all self-centered, and so when I found out she was married, because she kept saying, when we moved here, and she was young enough where I couldn't tell if she like moved there with her family or if she was dating somebody. I couldn't. And I finally asked her, well, who'd you move here with? She goes, oh, my husband, and we have a daughter. And so then I followed that up with like this other question I asked when I find out somebody's married or dating somebody. I asked them if I could ask their husband or wife if they could change one thing about them. What do you think they would tell me? And it was another very self-centered answer. So that really, underlined the fact that she didn't give, the correct answer in the 6 months to live question.
Gotcha.
And so I'm looking for people that have that John Nash equilibrium, that they're going to do what's best for the group or keep the group in mind at the same time, where they're going to do the best for themselves at the same time. And so that way you have a team of people that, like a lot of times in restaurants, servers will get really greedy and the greed will take over, and they want to like make the most money, or when they make enough money, they don't want to be cut, or they'll turn the lights up and turn the music off when they're ready to go home. And, all these different things, because they're like, they don't really put the guest first. And I love it when I hear servers talk to each other and they're like, hey, I know you're behind on covers. You want this table? And they're like, no, I don't think about those things. Go right ahead. It's your section. It's your table. I'll just do some side work. If you need anything, let me know. I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing. Right. Versus like going, yeah, I'm behind on covers and I'll take that table. And, and you should have like just known that I was going to take it. So, stuff like that.
Exactly. So really interviewing for character, emotional intelligence, and hospitality traits is just really finding someone that has heart, can have a good poker face or a game face, and really put everyone above themselves.
Exactly.
I love it. I think it's the perfect way to look at it. And really, I'm a big numbers guy, data analytics, and, all this other kind of stuff in revenue. And the one thing that we always forget, I think, during like revenue meetings and just like our management meetings in general, is these traits. We forget about the people, not only that we're checking in or that we're serving at a restaurant or at a bar, but really just the people that we have working for our guests and working for us at the hotel or the restaurant. And so applying this not just to interviews, but applying it to your everyday management style and life and work day, applying, having a heart for your team and for the guests, being able to put on your game face and really putting everybody else before yourself. And so really, I think this is going to wrap up the episode. So Scott, I really just want to say thank you again for, joining me on this epic 3-episode journey we're going to have, and really bringing a lot of knowledge and depth and heart yourself to the podcast and to everyone listening. Anything that you want to say to finalize your end?
Start with empathy.
Start with empathy.
Start with empathy with your team, with your employees, with your family, with your guests. Just start with empathy, and that will help. The minute that you start raising your emotional intelligence and putting yourself in other people's shoes, the minute that the whole team will buy into that leadership, and they will give everybody else around them the benefit of the doubt as well.
It's amazing. I think it's the perfect way to end it. So thank you, Scott. Again, we will be, obviously in touch and getting round 2 and 3 done. So thank you guys for listening. And I hope we brought a lot of value to what you want to do with your career and with those around you in the industry. Thank you again. Talk to you later, Scott.
All right. Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you very much for listening to the newest episode on Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. I was just joined with Scott Stanfield, a restaurant expert and a GM coach. He just started his new business, or not new, it's been about 4 or 5 years he's been doing the GM coach, but still really exciting. And this guy, like you just heard in the interview, in 90 days, he went from dishwasher to front of house manager. So obviously, he knows what he's doing. So go ahead and check out the link in either the description below, or you can find more information on the episode on my website, slicktalkthepodcast.com/podcast. You can find it in the menu drop down. The menu drop down will be there. You'll go to the podcast. You can listen to it. You can also see links to his website as well on mine. Check us out on social media. I'll be posting this on my Facebook. So I'm really excited to just really dive in this 3-episode podcast series with Scott and all the exciting things that we're going to do and learn from him on just restaurant hospitality overall. And so thank you guys again for tuning in. This is another great series. Recently was joined with Adam Knight not too long ago, and we did a 3-episode series on just hospitality. So series number 2 is on its way, and more special guest speakers to come soon and to be announced. We'll make an announcement on either the next or final episode of the series. Thank you guys, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for listening. We love your support and want to provide the best we can to all our listeners. So please find us online, social media, and on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast.
What's up, guys? Thanks again for tuning into Slick Talk. This is Joe from PBT. If you want to check out our music, feel free to search Perfect by Tomorrow on Spotify and iTunes and all other major music streaming platforms. We have a new album in the works. Hopefully will be released in early June. We're excited to share new music with you guys. We've been working really hard at it. Thanks again for tuning in.
What's up, everybody? If you've gotten this far into the episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast, then you are amazing, and thank you so much for tuning in. We want to send you 2 places really quickly. If you can, check out the show notes and click the hospitality.fm link. Check out all of our other shows on the podcast network. And don't forget, if you have someone that you want to hear on the podcast, then fill out the guest fill-out form so that way we can get them on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy another episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast.